Hello fellow magicians, I need to give you context for this video. So a viewer came to me and really did not like that I was running over 40 cards and said that I need to run 40 or else I'm making it inconsistent and not being optimal. I told them to at least try it out and they said no because it's worse than what they're already using. So I will be the olive branch and I will make a video on just that, running specifically a 40 card Endymion Mythical Beast deck. I do want to take this time and say that in my compilations, I only show duels that are fun to watch. If I go first turn and they surrender because I was negating everything, I don't show that because I feel that will be getting old pretty quickly for viewers. You guys can let me know if you guys think that I am correct or if you think that I'm wrong and you would like to see it. But I was under the assumption you guys would want to see some back and forth. I stressed this, I believe, in my Pendulum guide, but I would stress it again that my compilations are the duels that I felt was entertaining to watch. If I face against, let's say, Invoked Shaddolls, right? And if I negated their Alistair, their Invocation, and their other Shaddol card, right? And then they surrender, I feel I have no reason to show that, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So the viewer told me that I should look at Master Duel Meta, the site, for tournament Endymion decks. Now I do look on Master Duel Meta at times, so I checked like 2 days ago. On the site, for tournaments at least, or for any top decks, you can only look back up to 4 weeks ago before you have to pay. And I don't really understand the whole subscription thing with Master Duel. It feels pretty convoluted, but however, so in the past 4 weeks, I did not see any tournament Endymion decks. I had to change my scope to just Diamond Endymion decks. Some were over 40 and some didn't use the Mythical Beast engine at all. There was Zephyrus that popped up because they are considered like cousins of Endymion, and they do use Endymion Jackal King. So there were about 3 of them, 3 tournament Zephyr decks that used Endymion Jackal King, some of the mythical beasts such as Baby Jackal and Cerberus, and the deck sizes were about 50, one having 60, and none of them using grass. I can't use a lot of OCG, TCG in real life Endymion decks because, as shown in my Platinum guide, some of those winning Endymions are over 42. There are some that's exactly 40, but there's also quite a few that are over 40. And then obviously there are some OCG, TCG cards that aren't in Master Duel, so there's that too. All in all, I found about a couple of people that ran 40 cards with Mythical Beast. The most efficient one, since I played each, is Yurika's deck. I did some changes, which I will show right here. The left is her deck and mine is on the right. I'm assuming she is female from the name. I've burned a lot of mats for this video. I couldn't get some of the URs in the extra deck since I had burned them on Magician's Soul, because I was planning on doing a Soul video eventually. It's not in this video because of reasons I shall explain later. I'm not a fan of the other URs in the extra deck. They are great, but not my taste, though I do get the combo that you do go, for example, you go IP Masquerena, and then you go into Aftermax or Access Code to make a huge indestructible beater. Aftermax can be targeted, or you could technically go into Selene, who now can't be targeted for attacks or destroyed. It's also pretty good with Unicorn for disruption since you can link during your opponent's turn. I'm just thinking back on all of my compilations, and for me, the inability to link climb kind of bothers me, meaning that I can't go Electromite Astro into IP Masquerena. So I don't know if I would ever use it. You know how I typically play my deck. I should mention also, before I show the gameplay videos, I should mention that, and bear with me, when you look at non-tournament decks on Master Duel Meta, you see what's popular. And for example, Dragon Maid Dragon Link is more numerous than Dragon Maid Grass or Dragon Maid Dragoonity. But those last two are still great. Despia Dark Lord is more numerous than every Despia variant on the site, except for pure Despia, but it doesn't mean that all other variants are bad or unoptimal. Anyways, so here are the videos. So that is the deck, or at least what I can make of it. Now I want to now discuss some deck size, right? So the reason I made this video obviously is because of deck size questions. I will quickly name drop Triff Gaming as someone who runs over 40 cards in their Pendulum deck. I don't know if he does it to all of his Pendulum decks, because I know he has a few, but I know he does it to some, and he is a tournament player, at least in real life. It is time to now go over some math. If you aren't a math person, I will explain it quickly in the best way I can. I go to this site, which you see on the left. It is called stattrek.com. I will have the link in the description below. I used to do the math by hand, but I find this to be more convenient. Now the reason I'm showing this is because I want to show you guys why the belief that decks with over 40 cards are inconsistent is mathematically inaccurate. That's what I want to show for today. I should mention that I have done the math by hand before using this, meaning that I've done it by hand and then I have validated it with this site. So this site is a good site. It's pretty good. So let me explain how to use this. So this will be 40. So population size is deck size, right? Well, not right, because obviously you don't know, or you might not know. But yeah, population size in this context is 40. So the number of successes in population, so let's say card buy, right? Because you can only run 2 card buys. So you will say, okay, number of successes in population will be 2. For sample size, we're going to assume that you're going first, and this is your opening hand. So basically saying out of those 5, there's 2 that you want from your deck in your hand. Now it says number of successes in the sample. So what that means is, here I said 1. So you click 1 and it shows you this. So this top one means, in this context, what is the chances that I draw into exactly 1 card buy? That would be 22.4%. And then it goes to what is the chances of you drawing less than 1, which is basically 0. That's 76%. What is the chances that you will draw 1 or 0? That would be 98% or 99%. What is the chances that you draw greater than 1? So 2 in this case. This is a small number. That will be 1%. And then the chances of you opening with at least 1 or 2 is 24%. Or 23.7, but basically 24. So like roughly 1 in every 4 matches you will open with card buy. So we are going to focus on Fortress for a moment, meaning my deck. We will compare things like desires in 40 versus desires in 47, chances to draw into what you want, etc. So let's take Servant, the most important one. So in a deck of 40, assuming that you got 3, and assuming that your sample size, your opening hand is 5, right? Because we're assuming that you're going first turn. We are going to say, what is the chances that you get, let's say, exactly 1 Servant? The chances of you getting exactly 1 Servant in a 40 card deck is 30%. Now, I'm just kind of explaining what these other ones are. What we really care about is that very bottom one, which is what is the chances that you draw 1 or more. So the chances of you drawing 1 or more is 33.7%. So we're going to put that in here. And this chart is to kind of like help us visualize the difference. And then we check for 47. In a 47 card deck, that goes down to 29.2%. And in case you're wondering how I know the percent per se, even though it's in decimal form, in case you don't know, or in case you forgot or whatever, you take the decimal and then you times it by 100. That's how you do it. Now Kendo, you see that I have Kendo times 1 and Kendo times 2. The reason for that is because in my DPE video, I was saying that I was thinking on running 2 Kendos. So with that being said, we are going to test for both. So the chances of you opening with 1 Kendo in a 47 card deck is going to be 10%. So yeah, 10.6%. The chances of this happening in a 40 card deck is 12.5. And then you do the same thing for the 2. Just change the number of successes since you now have 2 Kendos. So this goes down to, and notice how it's not like, notice how this is a cumulative probability, meaning that it's not double. So just because you have 2 Kendos doesn't mean that your chances is double. It's actually a little less if you look at it. And then we do a 47 card deck. Actually, I'm gonna do all 40s and then I'm gonna do all 47s to make this go a little bit faster. So 2 Kendos, that will be 20.3. So then now Abductor, we run 2 only, so it'd be the same as Kendo. As far as what can you open it, like the chances of you opening with it is the same. And then we got Dissolver, which I run only 1 of, just like Kendo, well, at least in the past. So it'll be the same chances here on both. Bestiary I only run 2. I used to run 3, but then I jumped to 2. So 23.7, 20.3. We have Called By, which is also run at 3s, and then Dark Rulers also run at 3s. So these last 2 here is going to be the same chance to open with them. But to open with 1 or more of them. I should probably say that. The chance of you opening 1 or more. So, with that being said, so now we're going to move on. Not move on, but we're going to talk about now what these numbers mean. It would appear, right, that the 47 that I use is less consistent. But I'm showing you this to show you why this can't be used to say that a deck is inconsistent or is bad or isn't good or whatever, because these statistics, especially in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh, it doesn't account for things like searchers, draws, or situations. Here's what I mean by that. So searchers. For a servant, you can search it with Spell Power Mastery, Abductor, and Institution. And since I run 3 Institutions, 2 Abductors, and 3 Spell Power Masteries, that's 8. However, if you look at the site, right, it will be very inaccurate if I was to say 11. There's no 3 servants and then the 3 institutions, 2 abductors, and the 3 Spell Power Masters. It would be inaccurate to say, oh well, it's 11, so the chances is 75%, because just because I have those cards in my hand doesn't mean that the other cards with them will be able to allow me to search servant and put spell counters on her to pop off. You know what I mean? Because like, it doesn't matter if I have Spell Power Mastery in my hand, if I have 3 servants, 3 servants, my bad, no, 3 Endymions and a Jackal King, right, as an example. I mean, granted, you could technically search servant and then set Endymion and then kill him summon, but you know what I mean. Basically, just because you have it doesn't mean that you can use servant that way. Same thing with servant though. Just because you open with servant doesn't mean you have the other cards necessary to pop off. That is when it comes to, like, that is true consistency. When you look at, okay, I can open with servant, how consistent is it that I'm able to use her when I have her? And that's something that you can only really get from playing the deck. Now let's talk about desires for a bit. So when I say that this can't detect searches and draws, desires is a +1. So you can imagine someone saying that desires reduces a 40 card deck to 38, but it also banishes 10 from your deck, so that is inaccurate. But it is also inaccurate to say, because it also banishes 10 and draws 2, that it turns a 40 card deck into a 28 deck consistency wise, because it depends on what it banishes, as it might just ruin the deck entirely if you use it poorly. Now you can do the math to see the chances of that happening, so we're going to do that. So let's say that you mess up real bad, right? Let's say you messed up, or you bricked, or just, I don't know, just God hates you. And let's say that you need to use desires while Astrograph, Endymion, and Jackal King are all in your deck, right? They're not in your hand, they're not in extra deck, they're all in your deck. So population is going to be what's left of the deck size. So assuming that your opening hand has happened, so in my case I use 47, so we're going to say 42 opening hand. I have 42 cards now. So now I use all the desires. So we are not going to reduce the population size though, because we want to see what are the chances that you banish Endymion or Jackal King or Astrograph. So you would say the sample size is 10, because the sample size is the cards that's being banished. So then you say, okay, the number of successes in population, meaning what cards in your deck, in this case, do you not want banished, or do you want, or that you want to see if they are banished. So in this case, since I run 2 Jackal Kings, 3 Endymions, and 1 Astrograph, the total number is 6. Now you could check for each one individually, like you could say 3, and then 2, and then 1, but I'm going to just say all 6. And then number of successes in sample, so we'll keep it at 1 for now, and then I'll change it to kind of show you. So the chances of you banishing, assuming that I just use it, my very first card, the chances of you banishing 1 or more is 82.7%, right? Now I should probably type this in. Hold on. I should probably put this in. So here we are. Let me just scroll down a little bit. So we're going to say pots of desires. Here we'll say 47 card deck. Banishing greater, equal to or greater than. So equal to or greater than, then we do ... So the chances of banishing equal to or greater than 1 is 82.7%. Now that sounds daunting, right? You're like, wait a minute, you're saying that there's an 82%, that's a lot. But let's say, what are the chances that it's 2 or more? See, that drops. It drops down to 44%, or 44.3. So what this means is that 2 of any combination of the 6 will be banished. Well, that or more could be banished for 44.3. If you look at the top where it says, right here, 30.8%, that means that there's a 30.8% chance that 2 of any combination will be banished. So in this scenario, pretty much one third of the time, not 1/3, but like in 100 duels, if you were to break 100 times that you had these desires and they were all in your deck, and 30 of those, or almost 31 of those, at least 2 will be banished, is what this is saying. So now we say, what is the chances that it's 3 or more? Now that drops considerably down to 13.4. And then you can do let us finish it. So the chances of it being 4 is 2%. What 2.1%? I put that in. And then the chances of 5 is not even. Yeah, not even 1%. It's 0.1%. And the chances of all 6 is very small. Yeah, that's like, I can't even, how many zeros is that? That's like, I think that's, if I'm correct, I think that's 0.004% chance. So assuming you bricked, there's pretty much a 50-50 chance that you'll banish 2. I mean, obviously I'm rounding up, but that's kind of how that is. So like in 100 duels, in 44 of those duels where you use Palizars immediately, 44 of that should be you banishing 2. Now, that is the 40 card deck. Let's look at the 47. So I'm actually going to put these next to the 47 card ones. So let me just do this to separate them. So with Desires, we're going to do 40 now. Kind of the same thing. 1 is going to be 84, so not that big of a deal. But I mean as compared to. And then we got 2, which goes to 47. And then we're going to have 3, which goes to 15.2. Then we have 4, which does a 2.5%. And obviously when you get to 5 and all those, it gets considerably small. So this one is 0.2%. And then if you go to just you banishing all 6, it's pretty much the same thing but 5. So those are the chances right there. 40 card deck with the 47 card deck as compared to the 40 card deck. So those are the chances. This is why I say that it's fine to run Desires, because the chances of you bricking and not being able to get them should be rare. And if it's not rare, there's something wrong. And that is something that this site can't show you. So this is another good example on how this site really helps, but it can only tell you so much about a deck. Now to go further about the search discussions and all that stuff. So like I said earlier, it would be inaccurate for me to say, oh well, since I can search her with Spellpower Mastery, Institution, all that, I can just search her. However, even though it would be inaccurate for me to do that, that goes to show that the site can't this site can't what am I looking for? It can't account for search cards. So the total search cards you have in your Endymion deck, at least in mine, is Abductor, Spellpower Mastery, Cerberus, Institution, Jackal, Baby Jackal, and then yeah, and that's it. So you have cards that can either search half of the deck, which would be Cerberus and Spellpower Mastery, right? Cerberus can search Mythical Beast, Spellpower Mastery can search Endymions, or you have cards that can pretty much search the entire deck almost, being Abductor, which can search any Pendulum monster, and Institution, which can search any spell counter monster. But the site can't account for that. And for you to try to account for it, to plug in the numbers in here, is going to be way more effort than it's worth. Because then you have to check for things like what is the chances that I draw into both Servant and one Institution, and you know what I mean? So it's a lot more effort than it's worth. It's better to just play the deck than trying to put numbers in here. Now there are certain archetypes, not with just Endymions, but other certain archetypes like Zephyros that can afford to go over 40 due to the amount of searching they have. And therefore they can fit more stuff than the average deck that might be stuck to having to play 40 to 42. For example, I'm playing Despia Dark Lords. It's pretty hard to go above 40 and 42 because they don't have the ease of search that Zephyros and Endymions have. If you don't believe me, you can right now look up Zephyra in the Master Duel meta in the tournaments, and you will see that they are some pretty large decks, but they have a lot of searching going on, so it doesn't really matter for them. Now, aside from the searches and the draws, as I mentioned earlier, the site also can't account for situations. Let's take Kendo for example. For me, he isn't something that hurts the... Okay, so he's not something to me that hurts the consistency of the deck, even if you're going over 40. It's the same to add him. Since it solely depends on what's in your hand and what is required for him to work, it's not specific enough that he makes it less consistent, and I would actually argue he makes it more consistent. So in my combo guide, I believe I mentioned that I consider the mythical beast to have low scales. There's a skill of 4. So when I look at my deck ratio of low scales, high scales, I count them as lows. To me, Kendo helps even out that ratio, and this site can't reflect that, right? It can't reflect that from just the numbers I gave you. Now what you could theoretically do is, so back over to the site, you could say, let's say like me 47. Now I don't remember how many, I don't remember exactly how many low skills I have, but let's say that I have 12, right? And let's say that I have well, yeah, let's say that 12 and 12. So I got 12 low scales and 12 high scales. So what you could do is you could say number of population 12, sample size 5. So you want to see what is the chances that you have 2 or less, right? Because you don't want more than 2, you want 2 or less. So then you go here, and the chance of you getting 2 or less is about 90%, and the chances of you getting 2 or more is 37. Now the chances of you getting more than 2 is 10%, roughly. I mean, it's 9.7%, but roughly 10%. And then let's say, and so then what you would do is say, you say, okay, so the chances of me getting equal to or less than is 90%. And then you would say, okay, now let's pretend that you had more high scales, right? So you have 12 low scales. Let's pretend you had 15 high scales, right? And you say, okay, where are the chances that I draw 2 or less? Because you don't want too many. And then that would be 82%. So what you would do is you would take 0.82, and then you would, wait, let's say, yeah, 0.82, and then you will multiply it by 0.90. And that is the chance for you to have equal to or less than 2 low scales and have equal to or less than 2 low scales. See what I mean? So that is a way that you could do it if you want to ever check for low and high scales. As far as like what are the chances for me to get some high scales, some low scales, you can search that through here. It would require math on your part because obviously this can't do what I just said to do, but that is something that you could do. So I say all of that to say that when you use this site, just know that it's meant to give a more general of like, what are the chances that this card is in my hand, or what is the chances that I draw into double dark ruler and triple Endymion, right? But it cannot be used to answer what's wrong with my deck. It can help you guide to that answer to that question, but it by no means can take you all the way there, because there are many gray areas it cannot reach in a timely, non-brain frying manner. So for example, you could check to see the chances of bricking, but you need to account for every combination of a bricked hand, bricked draw, to then add them all together, and it's easier to just play the deck yourself and see for yourself. If you notice there are like 5 cards that seems to be really bricking you, you can go here and say, what are the chances that any combination of these 5 are in my opening hand? And then you'll be able to see the chances of getting only 1, at least 1, 3 or less, 4 or more, etc. Another situation which goes hand to hand with both of these examples of the searchers and the Kendo, you can't use it to gauge the average strength of your hand, because you have to think of the hand and put the numbers in to see the chances in getting that hand. In both decks, right? So in both of the decks that I played, you might open a hand with no servant but you have two institutions, a Cerberus, a Magister, and an Upstart. Both are completely possible in both decks. So, but with that hand, with the institution, Cerberus, Magister, Upstart, and then the second institution, you can pop off with that. You could get Servant. I mean, basically you have ways to like pop off, essentially, from that hand. And I wouldn't consider that hand weak, right? Now, let's say that you do open with Servant, right? So back to what I was saying, with how I was saying that just because you're more likely to open with Servant, you have to think outside of this site, because you could open with Servant, but you can also open Servant, but then have like one Cerberus, one Jackal King, an Endymion, another Endymion. You know what I mean? So in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh, this isn't like the end all be all like answer, like this is wrong, all this stuff. In both cases, bear with me till the end, the 40 card deck can draw into these two hands more often, because both hands are completely possible, and the one with the lower deck size can draw into both of these easier, the bad and the good. But this is not to say that the 40 card deck is worse or less consistent in its power, because the 40 card deck might not have, for example, Kendo, right? So when I draw into Servant, Triple Endymion, and Kendo, the 40 card deck might have drawn into Spell Power Mastery instead, because it had to cut Kendo to fit within 40 cards. So I just want to reiterate, the site is for you to see how consistent it is to get certain cards in your hand, or to see the chances of certain things happening in specific situations, such as the Pot of Desires. This cannot determine cause and effect of, oh, this deck is bad because of X, or oh, this deck is inconsistent because, you know, X. As it may be a collection of things, some things you might not think about. Now, before I move back onto the deck that I used for this video, and I know that I basically gave a math lesson here. I use this site because I'm a math geek, so I do multiple calculations to get the best rounded idea of what may be wrong with my deck if I feel something is wrong. What is all I'm trying to say about this site? It's really good. I would definitely recommend it, as long as you approach it knowing this is just giving you statistics, and that alone a lot of the times can't really decide cause and effect. It requires you to kind of use your knowledge to put two and two together. Now back to the video in the, back to the deck in the video after that long math session. So that deck is good. It has a very first turn variant playstyle. You've seen me cover this in the platinum video. You've seen me cover this in the platinum guide. The first turn variant is a good variant. It's not a bad one, it's really good. It's very aggro, it's very all or nothing. It has a lot of weaknesses, but a lot. It has all of the weaknesses and strengths that I mentioned in my platinum guide, which basically says it's as good as mid-range variant, such as my own, with each having their own strengths and weaknesses. I will now be going over my particular playstyle, because I think this might be a reason why that person spoke to me. Now, let me rephrase that. I think it's the reason that person had a certain belief about me. So, in my mid-range version, Fortress, you will notice I'll sometimes end with Electromite. I tried to mention these minor things when I put notes in the video for you guys, you know, at the top and bottom, but I can only put so much on there, because sometimes what happens is I might wanna like give you guys a note, or like, you know, say something at like timestamp 140, but then if I have a note that I want to say at like timestamp, let's say 2, that means that whatever I write at 140 has to be able to be read within 20 seconds. See what I mean? So like if I have a note that I want to say at 147 and then one at 152, the one that I put at 147 has to be able to be read in 5 minutes. So some things are left out because I don't have enough time to put what I want, and then you guys don't have enough time to read it before it goes away. And what I don't want to do is for you guys to always pause it trying to read it, you know what I mean? So back to Electromite. I may sometimes end with her if I have a monster in my pendulum zone with a spell counter, so that I can get a draw off of Endymion's negate. I don't always go Apollo because some people are starting to get smart enough to crush into Apollo, especially since there are now people who are able to like get rid of your Apollo in different ways. Now I don't use Selene all the time, right? Because I know the next question is, well, how come you don't go into Selene, right? Because she's a monster that holds spell counters, all that good stuff. I don't use Selene all the time because the battle protection is nice, as well as the special summon effect. But we use pendulums, so the special summon is limited because it's from hand or graveyard. In my opinion, I could use it to get back, let's say, an Endymion. And by the way, when I say in my opinion, what I'm trying to say is that her special summon is limited, in my opinion. My bad. That's what I meant by that. But anyway, so I could bring back Endymion, of which I have used for Absolute, but I typically link Absolute off by linking into Selene for Apollo or access code. So I usually don't have Selene anymore to then get back my Endymion. I have been using Absolute to go into Verde, though, which is pretty fun, as sometimes my board looks like a fusion deck rather than a spell counter deck. You see like Endymion, Jackal King, and then the rest is like Vortex, DPE, and Starting Venom. Like, is this a pendulum deck? If it's like a fusion deck. And then Dark Law happens. Wait, what? Alright, so next. So this aggro variant, the one that I use in the video, I played for this video as Cross Sheep, and I just don't see myself using it. Now this isn't me, this is not me critiquing the deck, by the way. This is me looking at it based on how I prefer to play, and then looking at it based on what, you know, the combos that I do, what I see. Basically what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that the deck is bad, and I'm not saying that Cross Sheep is terrible. So the combo for Cross Sheep is, assuming you have either Souls or Blue Boy, and in case you don't know, Blue Boy is the Spellbook Magician. Now I'm gonna say that you're probably going into Cross Sheep using Souls, and I say that because Blue Boy is typically not on the field because of knowledge. But so what you do is you have Cross Sheep, right? And then you go into Absolute. You know, however you do it, you go into Absolute, and then you either link it off to make Cross Sheep, or you can, you know, do something or something. But once you summon Vortex after you remove Absolute in some way, Cross Sheep will activate, then it will summon Souls or Blue Boy. And then you take that, you link into Selene, who would then special summon either the Endymion that's in the graveyard now, or Souls or Blue Boy. So if you do Souls or Blue Boy, you can go into a link 4, right? So like Apollo and then Tucker, or you can special summon the Endymion back. Now I understand the combo. I see the combo. But for me, the pieces required to do it and the resources you're using don't feel like it is objectively better, in my opinion. I heard from others who do play the full-on Spellbook variant deck. You know, where they use Spellbook, they use the Souls and all that. They say, what they told me, is that Souls is necessary in a Spellbook Endymion deck, like just that variant. But the Spellbook Mythical Beast Endymion variant can live without it. Now, as you know, I typically didn't use the Spellbook Engine in my regular deck. But with DPE, I decided to use the Spellbook Engine because I did drop Desires off of the deck. And since I dropped Desires so that I don't banish my you know, my engine, I instead switched to Spellbook Engine. So now for Magician's Soul specifically, since I did try it. For Mythical Beast Endymions specifically, when it comes to its draw effect specifically, I personally do not like it because most spells I could send to the graveyard, I much rather just use them right there. And I will go into Cross Sheep again. I just want to talk about this card real quick. Why send? Well, in my perspective, when I use souls, I have very few spells that I want to send to the graveyard, because if I have, for example, 2 upstarts, I'd rather just use the 2 upstarts rather than using its effect to draw 2. You know what I mean? So the only way that it would make sense for me to use this would be for cards like Spellpower Mastery, where it's a harder once per turn, because you can't send Pendulum monsters in the zones to the graveyard as they go to the extra deck. So, and also in my case, I could also use a Dark Ruler in my hand as well, but that isn't common enough for me to run him for that. It does. Now this is the effect that is still pretty good, even for my version of the deck. It does mill an Endymion for Selene, which is a good effect, and it's the effect that you care about. So, for this variant, it allows you to go Electromite plus Souls into Selene to then switch to summon Endymion from the graveyard. For me, its mill effect alone is not enough for me to run it. It's good, but that effect by itself is not enough, and I can't use its other effect. See what I mean? So it's a good card, just not for me, at least personally. Now back to Cross Sheep, because I wanted to discuss this card first before I went further into Cross Sheep. Is that, so this is my issue with kind of just the Link 2s. I mentioned this with IP Masquerena, is that, so IP Masquerena requires 2 non-link monsters, so the fact that I can't climb kind of bothers me. For Cross Sheep, for me, the combo is a little weird, because normally I just do Electromite, you know, do the thing, and then I go into Selene and, you know, do my whole shenanigans. For me, that's typically enough. I don't ever really need to, like, summon Cross Sheep and then try to get Astral Griffin and Endymion, and then try to absolute, and then try to get it removed, to then summon Vortex, to then do this. Like, it feels more, in my opinion, it feels more convoluted. But I feel like that's because I'm running a Mythical Beast Endymion, where the decks that use Cross Sheep, at least from what I've seen, runs a little less Mythical Beast. Some of them don't run Institution, quite a few of them don't run the Citadel. Like, it's just a very different playstyle. So that's all I gotta say about that. So for Endymion Mythical Beast, which is the variant that I run, I will say that I personally am not a fan of either Cross Sheep or Magician Souls. I will make a whole new video on Magician Souls. It'll be kind of short though, because it is just Magician Souls. But let's continue on. So I want to talk about one last thing before I end this video, and this is pretty important. So if you ever listen to me talk, either in the Peer Guide, Platinum Guide, any of my tech videos, or even in this video, you will notice that I say "in my opinion," or I say "personally for me." I say that on certain things that some people may feel or sound like it should be fact, right? So like if I say, "in my opinion, Master Cerberus is good," some of you will be like, well, of course it's good. It's a fact. But if you, well, yeah, so Master Cerberus used to not be liked. He still kind of isn't liked. And that's because he's level 8. His effect is ignition. It targets. He can still be targeted by card effects. And his attack is not higher than Endymion's. And so therefore it doesn't make up for the fact that he's level 8, because he has higher defense, but who cares? So people at a time viewed him as a weaker Cerberus. I was like, what? They viewed Cerberus as a weaker Endymion. My bad. And people felt that he sucked more than Jackal. They feel like he sucked compared to Jackal King. So for me, I would say Cerberus is good in my opinion, because I want them to be able to come to me and express their opinion. So, for example, someone came to me about the card Soul Pendulum. Now I'm going to show you what that card is. So give me a minute. I'm going to show you what that card is. So let me just close all this. Okay. So Soul Pendulum. To this card, to give you a gist, you can target 2 cards in your pendulum zones, change each target's pendulum scale by 1, minimum 1. You can only use this effect of Soul Pendulum once per turn. Each time your pendulum monsters is pendulum summoned, place 1 counter on this card. Pendulum monsters on the field gain 300 attack for each counter on this card. You can remove 3 counters from this card during your main phase of this turn. You can conduct 1 pendulum summon of a monsters in addition to your pendulum summon. You can only gain this effect once per turn. So that's the effect. So in my video, I said that it was my opinion that it felt very subpar, not good enough, doesn't add enough, it doesn't do anything when you activate it. You have to do something else with it, which I didn't like. Now the reason I say that, in my opinion and stuff like that's because I want people to feel comfortable to say, hey, I think you're wrong, and then state their reasoning on why, right? Because imagine if, instead of saying, in my opinion, this feels very subpar, I instead say, this is subpar. If you play it because it's fun, that's okay, but it's not optimal. To me, that's a little dismissive, because it will insinuate that they're only playing it because it's fun, when they could truly believe it is optimal or good tech. During my college psychology class, a good example used when we are talking about people being dismissive is if someone is being rude to someone, right? And that person starts yelling for a presumed good reason. If that rude person, saying the one that was rude, if that person stays calm and says, why are you getting defensive? Why are you angry? Why are you angry for no reason? It makes the angry person look crazy, even if they have a legit reason to be upset. The whole, why are you getting defensive? Why are you angry for no reason? That would be dismissive. And I say this to say, if you want to talk to me because maybe you don't agree with me on something I said, or you feel that I misplayed somewhere, or that so if you feel that I misplayed somewhere, or that you don't agree with me, I am 100% on board with having those talks with, all of you. But I just want to make it clear that try to not be dismissive towards anyone. I mean, not just me, but my viewers, whoever, whether it be by accident or on purpose. Obviously, if it's on accident, I'm not going to hold you against it, obviously, because at the end of the day, we are talking through text. But just be mindful, and if it's by accident, it's all good. Now, off of that serious note, I will be doing Dark Lord Dispia gameplay, and I'll be doing a guide. as well as an Endymion DPE guide, which will include combos, both being in solo mode and in ranked mode. I might make that separate, I don't know. Because the reason I do solo mode combo guides is because I kind of want to show you just how deck functions without interruptions. I made a mistake on not revisiting my combo guide in the other one because, because like I said, a ranked combo guide is kind of overdue for the other one. But I will also be doing, since I said that, I will be doing a ranked combo guide for the non-DPE Endymion, since my last one, like I said, was in solo mode. And also, I will link my Discord in the description. And so those are the plans. I will also be trying to move towards, after I do Despia of Dark Lords, I will be moving straight to Witchcrafters and doing that deck, doing gameplay in that guide. I'll be then doing Aromas and Rikas. And then after that, it's going to be a slight pause because certain cards that I need for certain decks I want to play aren't in Master Duel yet, unfortunately. But yeah, so anyways, so my Discord link is in the description. And so those are my plans. Love you all, and may the spell stones be with you.